Hello, my name is Rob and welcome to Directors Uncut. If this is your first episode, we put filmmakers from all corners of the globe onto a huge list that covers everything from Czechoslovak New Wave to 1940s Old Hollywood. Then we turn it into a lottery of directors, and by using a random number generator we pick a name out of the hat. Whatever name comes out, myself and some guest hosts discuss them and their work through two films. We are really cracking down on our Patreon archive and we are down to the last four. For this episode I'm joined by Graham, as I am in all of the Patreon episodes, and Cliff. But yes, how are you two?
Yeah, all right. Yeah.
Fine, yeah.
Can't really segue out of that.
Sorry, did you want a bit more chatting?
Oh, yeah.
Did you want me to tell you about my lost wallet tonight? Got off the train, no wallet. Started cancelling my cards. Couldn't log into two of my accounts to cancel the cards. Decided to go back to the station, and none of the cards had been stolen. My wallet was there. So, end of story.
It's a nice
But it's
story.
made for quite a fraught evening.
I went to the showcase for my niece's 18th today, and amazingly they've updated it so it doesn't look like it's still trapped in the 1990s. So that's a big win for me.
Yes, very impressive.
Yeah, because it's just notoriously like the most retro cinema around here. Looks like it's trapped.
It was actually built in the early 90s, and for a long time they clearly looked at that and thought, yeah, that's good. We've levelled off.
Was it ever a
style doesn't go out of fashion?
Was it ever a UCL? UCL?
Oh,
that's not
possibly.
what it was called, was it? That UCL's a London University.
UCG.
UCG.
Yeah, we did have
UGC.
one.
UGC.
We did
UGC.
have one of them. I think they became Cineworld.
Oh yeah, they did, didn't they?
But anyway, yeah.
I believe so.
It's enough waffle. We have a director. It is Larry Cohen, exploitation guy through and through. But what's our experience like with the work of Larry Cohen? I say with the work because I watched the documentary recently, King Cohen, and he is a super prolific writer. So keeping it open like that. So writing stuff or directing. What's your experience?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because my only experience with him has been as a writer. I mean, when I was getting into movies about the turn of the millennium, there seemed to be a time when Larry Cohen did the script for a different Hollywood thriller about a telephone every week. It's a niche, but he worked it.
Apparently he recast that as well, the phone booth. The original the original actor, he said, I don't like the voice of that guy. He doesn't buy it.
I thought you were going to say it was originally a Mercury kiosk and he went for a BT.
No, he's just a big fan of Kiefer Sutherland, apparently.
Yeah.
Somebody has to be.
No, it's true. It was some, I don't know who was the original actor in Phone Booth, but doing the voice. But Larry Cohen used his clout, even though he was only the writer, to get Joel Schumacher to replace the voice on the whole film once he'd seen it.
In fairness, Gilbert Gottfried was a pretty weird choice for the villain.
Oh, that'd change that so much. So, Cliff.
I think it could work. Yeah, so obviously being a horror fan my whole life, I have seen several of his horror films, and I think at least a couple of them on Moviedrome. Back in when was Moviedrome? 80s or 90s? Both? Did it straddle?
I think sort of straddling the decades, if memory serves.
So it was either Alex Cox introducing him on that or Mark Cousins. More likely to be Alex Cox, wasn't it? Not a Mark Cousins thing on whatever his equivalent was. So I remember Q was definitely shown on that. So that might have been my first experience. VHSs out the video shop. With other ways of seeing them. Definitely rented the Stuff a few times on that. The Stuff being a weird one. It's probably the one I've seen the most because it feels like it should be really, really good. And it never is. It's never that good, but it feels like it should be really, really good. And it had an amazing still on the back of the VHS box that made me need to see it as soon as I could. So, so it's basically mainly, exclusively, I would say, his horror films that I've seen. And not even all of them, but I have reasons for that, which I'll go into once we start talking about one of his horror films, I think.
I have to ask you what the still was. I can't let it lie.
It's the radio DJ who I believe is called, I hope I'm not getting this wrong and it's going to sound racist, but I believe he is actually called Chocolate Charlie.
I think it was Chocolate Chip Charlie, if I remember correctly.
That's it. Chocolate, yeah. Is that chocolate? Chocolate Charlie, it says on IMDb. Yeah, Chocolate Charlie. With his mouth really, his jaw just expanded like loads, like really huge face, mouth gone mad. It's
I know the still, yeah.
Yeah, one of those things that looks better in the still than it does in the film, but never mind.
Yeah, I've seen a fair few. I've seen his dabbles in blaxploitation, Black Caesar. It's a blaxploitation movie, I guess. I think they had like the James Brown score, which it's James Brown, so it's amazing.
Yeah.
I can't remember the actor now. Who was in that?
Was the Fred Williamson one?
It is.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where you go into prison and you come out and you're like the coolest cat imaginable. It only happens in blaxploitation, which is one of the fun things of it.
I have to admit, I had no idea until watching the documentary about him that he wrote Maniac Cop and Body Snatchers. David Ferrara's Body Snatchers, that is.
Which isn't a bad film, honestly. As far as...
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a big Abel Ferrara fan, but as far as versions of that story, it's pretty good.
We end up talking about Abel Ferrara's Body Snatchers a lot on this podcast, and one day I've got to actually watch it.
It's like
Don't get too excited.
In the original, it was like pod people, but in this one, it's like pube people in the attic or something. It's really, really weird. So from that, I don't know how we're segueing into what we want to cover first, but the two movies we had were 1972, I believe, Born, and 76's God Told Me To. I don't know if I got the years correct there.
God Told Me To is dated 75 on the actual print, but I think it probably came out 76.
So which one do you want to tackle first?
Well, God Told Me To is the one that I had the most knowledge of before going in, and that knowledge was, let me just go through my notes. Andy Kauffman is in it.
That sequence. Oh, it's audacious.
It's absolutely.
Yeah.
No permits for shooting, just turned up and did that.
On December 25th, 1953, a child is born, a virgin birth. Tomorrow, all civilization will tremble under his almighty power. He must be obeyed.
Who were Moses and Jesus really? Accept me, no questions. Sacrifices to your God are nothing new.
Are you going to tell me all those people are meant to die?
Why did you attack all those people? God told me to.
God told me to.
As far as Synopsis, I don't know who wants to tackle that, because I don't think I'm equipped to tackle the whatever that is.
All right, well, I haven't prepped anything, but let's give it a go. So, in New York, a bunch of people are committing mass murders, seemingly at random, and when questioned by the police, they all say, God told me to. And so a detective who's a Catholic goes investigating and discovers it all relates to a Messiah-like figure who lives somewhere weird, and it might have something to do with an alien rape back in 1951 and an intersex person, and yeah, it all goes a bit weird.
It is a surpassingly odd film, isn't it? Yeah.
It's sort of pre-Cronenberg, because that
Yeah.
Messiah-like character has like a vagina in his hip, and it's just really bizarre.
And when you see that, I mean, it's right at the end, so it's a bit of a spoiler to dive straight into that bit. But when you see that, is that the vagina that he had when he was a baby and they didn't know which sex he was? Because I think if you've got full cock and balls in the normal place and then a vagina on your abdomen, I would say that's not quite the same as being intersex.
Something a bit more serious has happened here than just being intersex, hasn't it? Yes.
Quite a convincing looking vagina as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Out of all the hip-mounted vaginas I've seen, it's easily in the top 20 most convincing.
I can't follow that, but I'll just segue out of it. But it's an interesting.
He could literally go fuck himself, couldn't he?
He could, yes.
Wow. I was going to segue from that to talk about Michael Moriarty, but I think that's a bit of an insult, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
Michael Moriarty,
especially as he's not in it.
This.
No.
Oh, I've got my names wrong here.
Well, wasn't that the lead wasn't his first choice, was it?
Ah, yes, I'm confusing that with Q. My mistake, yeah. Michael Moriarty was in Q and a few other bits that he's done.
Yeah. I think Q was the first one that Cohen cast him in. Could be wrong. Yeah, I think it must have been.
Oh, yeah.
But
the lead is Tony LaBianco. It was going to be, and this would have been very interesting, it was going to be Robert Forster.
That wouldn't have been bad.
No, it would have been a much better film, I think. Robert Forster's got presence that I don't think this Tony LaBianco does. I'm
glad you thought that. I think there is. I mean, I think there's a lot that's good in here, and I do think it's a very good film. But I think that Tony LaBianco is kind of a weaker centre than it deserves. Perhaps.
Which is also quite a Cronenbergian thing, because a lot of even Cronenberg's best films, are hampered by very bland lead actors.
Thinking of Stephen Lack here, aren't you?
Well, Brood as well. I can't remember the lead actor in The Brood, but he's a non-entity too.
Yeah.
Well, that's astonishing because it's Oliver Reed.
No, not that. What, the other guy?
Oh.
The other guy. Art Hindle.
Ah.
Yeah, he's just sort of present, isn't he, really? But the thing for me for this, I think its concept, it's a good movie, but its concept is way more interesting than the way it's delivered. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. And that is Larry Cohen, well, certainly his horror films, just all over. I find his concepts really exciting and original and outlandish, and then he just doesn't have the directorial chops to pull it off. That's what I find.
Maybe the problem with God Told Me To is that a lot of the most provocative and interesting material is front-loaded. I mean, the very idea that you've got this sudden spate of religiously inspired spree killings is a great concept for a film, and it starts right in the first scene. It doesn't pause for a second before throwing you into it. The explanation for it with the UFOs is amazing. A brilliant twist. But it happens about halfway through. And after that, there's a lot of really wild material, a lot of memorable and outrageous stuff, like your chap with the hip fanny. But I don't think there's anything that's as purely gripping as those opening spree killings.
Yeah, absolutely. When it's a thriller at the start, it's really good. As soon as it goes into a more horror direction, I just lose interest. I just don't think, despite how many horror films he made, I don't think he was a very good horror director. However, having said that, I am kind of probably rare among the horror fandom community, whatever you want to call it, in that I don't really rate a lot of those American masters of horror. I think John Carpenter, George Romero, Wes Craven, I think they made one or two really good films each, and the rest of their careers were very mediocre. So, I think a lot of these guys just coast off the reputation of their one or two great films. And Larry Cohen, I don't think had any great horror films, but they're all right. I haven't seen a really bad one. They're just like I say, high concept but poor execution.
Well, I go stronger than all right. I am a big fan of any film that showcases like 40 in material and 40 in ideas beyond the standard sort of UFOs and ghost stuff that films traditionally know about. And the way that aliens are used in this as a kind of surrogate messiah figure, as something that is interfering in like human breeding, is all stuff that after the X-Files in the 90s, everyone would be doing. You could not move for alien breeding programs in the 90s. It was a pain in the arse, often literally. And to see it done in the mid-70s, I think is really to Cohen's credit. He was clearly keeping abreast of some very interesting underground paranoid thinkers to even have some of this stuff on his radar.
I mean, even just thinking as a concept on paper, alien movies in the 70s, outside of the obvious,
outside of like Close Encounters, alien horror movies, I think.
Kind of thin on the ground, really. I mean, outside of Alien, which is technically 70s, but later.
Yeah.
It's thin.
Yeah, it is. But then I suppose the alien content in this is significant, but brief.
Yes.
It's almost in passing. I'd forgotten about it. I saw this film 6 years ago and I'd forgotten that aliens were even involved. I remembered pretty much everything else about it, but not the alien bit.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I like it a great deal, but it does have a bit of a not tonal whiplash maybe, but it feels like two movies stuck end on end. The first half, the crime stuff, which it has all the audacious shooting things of like the bit with the police rally where he basically said, just go in there in the police march and fake a shooting, essentially, with Andy Kauffman, and people say, oh, hi Andy, and he kept it going, People just thought, it's Andy Kauffman being Andy Kaufman. It's fine. It's just what he does.
Yeah, I've got to say, if there was one like stand-up comedian of the 1970s who I would not be surprised to see like faking a mass shooting at a police parade, it's definitely Andy Kaufman.
But then he has the first interaction with Alien Jesus, not the good Alien Jesus from The Visitor either, a different Alien Jesus.
Oh, Alien Jesus from The Visitor, Franco Nero, yeah.
Yes.
And it just feels complete. I mean, we kind of have to spoil it, I think. I don't think you can really talk around how it twists in the second half without giving the game away.
I think we've already trampled over that line. It's fine.
Essentially, the guy in the attic with the lights and the fire is a sibling to the police investigator. And it just completely upends the movie and turns it into something different. And it has these bits like, I don't even know how to describe them. Like the bit in the bar where he stares at the black guys playing pool. That's just such a weird scene.
One of the weird things about it is that the toilet is just right next to the pool table, from what I could make out. Just like, guy gets told to flush the drugs down the toilet when the cop turns up, and he just turns face a wall, starts, chucking it down and flushes it. It's like, do they not care about privacy in this pool hall?
Needs must, I guess.
I mean, I wouldn't pull my pants down anywhere where there's that many pool cues flying around, I'll tell you that.
That bit I had a problem with. It's just such a weird scene. I'm not wrong in that. It just completely... The flighty stuff, the stuff with the aliens, the stuff with the concepts it's thrown around, I can get behind that, but just when it tries to ground it and sort of make it mesh somehow with the police stuff, it gets a bit... I don't even know what it is, honestly.
There are some bits that I like in what I guess we'll have to call the more realist segment of the film. I think the stuff with the newspaper reporter, Everett Lucas, is really good, kind of Sam Fuller style hot metal version of the press that I think is really effective.
I wonder if Rizal Solani stole a bit of that score during the newspaper headline montage for Cannibal Holocaust. The really sort of screechy strings bit really reminds me of the bit where they're burning down the village in Cannibal Holocaust.
He does do good music, though, Larry Cohen in all his movies. I mean, I think it was Q, wasn't it? Was the last one that Bernard Herrmann did, or something around that line?
Well, this one's dedicated to Bernard Herrmann, so no.
Yeah, this was going to be Bernard Herrmann's last score, but he died before it could be completed.
The music always elevates the movies with Larry Cohen, I think, and it's no different here. This could be...
Is done...
I mean, it is a B movie through and through, but I think the music pulls it above what you traditionally think of as a B movie.
So it was it It's Alive that was Bernard Herrmann's final score, I think? Yeah.
Well, Bernard Herrmann's final score was
Taxi Driver.
Yeah, it did them concurrently, I think, though.
Yeah, okay. This is Frank Cordell, who did the score, but it's got a couple of pieces from Rob Ragland, who did do the score to Q that Rob mentioned. After Herrmann died, it should be noted, Cohen asked Miklos Rosa to score the film, and Rosa sent him back a note saying, "God told me not to."
That's a good bit of trivia.
Yes.
Yeah, so there might not be many alien horror films in the 70s, but what there were a lot of are these kind of realistic thriller horror crossovers. So you think like The Exorcist, The Possession of Joel Delaney, things like that. And I suppose to an extent The Omen, although that's a bit more, No, probably not
A
The
bit
Omen,
more
actually.
Hollywood.
No.
Yeah.
But Possession of Joel Delaney and The Exorcist, both 72. There was that one I watched recently, which was not very good. Let me just find out the title of it. It was also had... Hang on. What was it called? Oh, fucking hell. I say recently. I've seen so many films. Like, just scrolling back. Where is it? Doesn't matter. Anyway, it was... there's some kind of cult thing on it. There's a boat. There's a cult. It's not the Mephisto Waltz. It's got a similar title to the Mephisto Waltz. I don't know. Anyway,
there are a lot of 70s things that are remembered as horrors that are sort of on the thriller borderline.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we mentioned Abel Ferrara earlier. Driller Killer is basically one of those scuzzy New York movies like Taxi Driver or Panic in Needle Park that just happens to have gone a bit further and sort of become a horror film, but not quite.
So it was the Pix, aka the Hooker Cult Murders. That's what I was trying to remember. That was 73. That's another similar one.
I would never have got that from the clue. The title was a bit like the Mephisto Waltz. I guess the Hooker Cult Murders also starts with the...
Yeah, and as does the Pix. And I don't know why I've always associated... Maybe they've got similar posters. Maybe that's all it is.
Maybe.
Yeah. It's an interesting movie, I think. It's kind of symbolic of his work, I think. It's kind of front-loaded towards the guerrilla aspect. A bit too much, maybe. I mean, it works in some cases in the idea of it's supposed to be these murders happening all over the place, and apparently both in this and Q, he got in trouble for faking shootings in city centres. So that authenticity and the crowd shots do work.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm a big fan of kind of guerrilla filmmaking, no permit stuff, because, I'm a big fan of Italian films, cinema of the 70s, and... one of the things they always said about New York is it was really easy to make films there because they'd just dish out these filming permits. But, a lot of the time it's just more exciting to watch a film that hasn't had the permits. It's quite obvious that they're doing it in a rush.
Yes.
In essence, though, I think that's where this is absolutely at its best. That flying by the seat of its pants in the first half, it's fantastic stuff. It's got an energy which I don't think anything could possibly match, really. It's very raw, but I think the rawness works for it in that regard. Because
there's quite a long shot from a window of the water tower that the sniper's standing on. And you think, well, if it could be seen from that far away by the camera where it's positioned, then people must have been able to see it from all over the city.
But I think one of the things that it does get very right is that pervasive sense that even when something happens in front of your face, you can't really trust it. Like, there's that wonderful interview with the gunman's mother, which is clearly patterned off all those interviews that Lee Harvey Oswald's mum gave after the Kennedy assassination, where she says very foreknowledgeably that actually people have told me it's physically impossible to shoot that many people from that range.
Yeah.
And it does have that kind of holdover sense of paranoia from the 60s still in it.
Those interviews do work to its favour a great deal. I can't remember which instance it was, but the guy who effectively shot his family, his kid was running away, his wife was running away, and he shot her in the back, and he just starts laughing about it. That's a great scene. That sort of thing, I think, he laps up in this sort of material.
So that's not the Water Tower Sniper is obviously a reference to Charles Whitman as well.
Oh yeah.
And maybe Oliver Stone should do a documentary or a film about the truth behind the God Told Me To Water Tower Sniper. See if it was physically possible.
Yes.
I guess any sort of closing thoughts on this one?
I don't wear pyjamas, but you wear them instead of underwear, not as well as them, don't you? When the cop gets out of bed, he's clearly wearing white pants under his pyjama bottoms, which just seems overkill.
I mean, how cold is it?
It is New York.
That's the question.
So, there's a lot of old buildings there.
Yeah.
What is it? March, isn't it? March in New York.
Yeah, I can lay him off for that.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
I think.
Oh yeah. I also wanted to mention Mike Kellin, who plays his boss, the chief, the police chief or whatever. He's so good. He's better known perhaps as the really rancid old campsite owner in Sleepaway Camp. He's just so sleazy in that. It's horrible. And he's just got such a great face. I think Larry Cohen is really good at finding people with amazing faces.
Yeah. I think my closing thought, and something that should tell you exactly why I enjoyed this film, is that there is a point in my notes which simply says, "It's a fucking alien breeding program." And that is very much the level at which I engage with films on. Does it have a fucking alien breeding program in it? Yes, this does.
That sequence is so well shot, though. That alien breeding floating.
Where she's floating through the spaceship.
2001-esque style.
Towards another vagina.
Nightmare.
I was going to say, to watch something that made me think for a second, all right, is this just me? Or, no, that's not me. That really is what it's meant to look like, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
It's such a harsh cut as well between this scene in an old people's home and that. It's kind of wild.
It's just occurred to me, that's how she remained a virgin. That's why it's a virgin birth, because nothing went in her vagina. Her whole body went into the alien vagina.
Yes.
And somehow impregnated her.
Aliens. Am I right?
Amazing, yeah. I mean, they might breed in a very weird way, but they've got exactly the same anatomy.
The actor in that
when it comes to vaginas.
The actor in that scene's very familiar.
What, the woman in the
old woman or the younger version of her?
The old woman, yeah.
The older woman.
But then again,
is...
he had a habit of casting actors who were out of work, so maybe that's the.
With Sylvia Sidney, who also appeared as the afterlife caseworker in Beetlejuice.
That might be where, yeah.
She's the grandma in Mars Attacks.
Oh, is she?
Oh, the one at the end. The one at the end, yeah.
Who has the country and western record, yes, that proves to be significant.
Okay.
Devil Times 5 is the fast-paced podcast in which comedians and horror experts dissect a different theme, franchise or subgenre each month before playing a round of horror's hardest quiz. Scary noises. So, for hot takes and piss takes, listen to Devil Times 5, the British horror podcast that knows how to have fun.
저한텐 세상이 수수께끼 같아요.
나 모르겠어? 우리 어릴 때 같은 동네 살았잖아. 내 부탁 하나만 들어줄래?
벤이라고 합니다.
Taking a little break from the episode to have some announcements, links, the usual podcasty stuff that you find in the middle of podcasts that people usually skip over. Yes, so if you like the podcast, please do subscribe and share it with your friends on social media. Tag me if you do that. I am at _IJ Simpson on Twitter, and on Instagram I am Directors Uncut Pod. I need to be a bit better at Instagram though, let's be fair. Also, if you have something that you want to pass on to the podcast, you can email us at directorsuncutpod@gmail.com. I promised a few announcements. Well, just the first and most obvious one is what's coming up for the rest of the series. We have Jackie Chan, we have Lee Chang-dong, and we have Alexander McKendrick. As for which one of those is next, you will hear a clip after I'm finished banging on, and yeah, it'll happen there. As for announcements, there's a few bits. As I suggested there's 3 episodes left in the series. After Alexander McKendrick, we'll be taking a month's break just to record some episodes and recharge batteries, really. And from then we'll be picking up with Season 2 of Directors Uncut for an as yet unspecified number of episodes. Also, there's a few other bits. I mentioned in a previous episode how we're doing this thing called One Shot and Done. We put directors on the list of directors who famously had 1 or 2 movies and that was it. And so we've got one of those coming up in Season 2, and those are very rare occasions where it'll be a Patreon exclusive, not a monthly thing, just a when the name comes out thing. And the other thing is I'm looking to do more YouTube stuff. I ran a very, very, very short-lived series called Listomania, which I call Needlessly Nerdy Lists, where I take a theme and pick some movies that you might like with that fame. For example, I did an episode about alien invasion movies where the aliens decided to invade somewhere which isn't an American soil. Quite specific, yes. And the other one that I particularly enjoyed doing was rip-off movies that are actually pretty good. So I am hoping to continue to pick those up again. Again, only when I have the ideas, because forcing these things out on a periodic scale is usually what burns you out. So, yeah, that's all of the announcements and stuff that you put in the middle. Let's jump into the clip where we pick which of those 3 directors is coming up on the next exciting episode. I'm not going to do a horrible, tortured pun to segue from that into the middle bit where we pick what we're going to do next, because that's Graham's job. He's the master of terrible puns.
Yes.
I'm saying that with love, by the way. You know, he does enjoy his puns.
I do, yes.
So Graham now has to help pick the next director because Rob told you to.
There we go. We've got...
Yes, quality work.
401 directors on the list.
Yes, A Space Odyssey.
So the next one is going to be director number 190. That's 190.
190 is Lee Chang-dong.
Oh, no. It doesn't mean I've got to be a fan of all of them. I mean, come on.
One of the things that I do love about this show is that Rob would make the worst poker player of all time.
The reason why I say or not about my memory was right is he's the director of Burning.
Burning, a film which has 2 scenes that are about as good as you would get in an okay Claire Denis movie, and everyone lost their mind about it.
Yeah.
So on the last episode, you mentioned what was it you were talking about? And you said, yeah, because I didn't like Burning either. Was it Drive My Car? But that's not got
Drive
anything to do
My Car,
with him,
yeah,
is it?
the Murakami connection.
Oh, right, okay, fine. Wondered what the connection was there.
This might result in me watching this again, Burning again. So
he's done a lot of other things. He's done poetry. I think that was where I first heard of him. There's some of his early films that have a particularly strong following. Secret Sunshine, I think a lot of people like.
Yeah. I think that got him on the radar of a lot of people. I think it was one of the big first Korean Criterion movies.
I would definitely like to go back to one of the very early ones, just, to see whether he was always like this.
I guess the elevator pitch for him really is misanthropic, social realist Korean director. That's kind of his vibe.
I guess, yeah. I don't know. I can't really pin him down because all of the ones I've seen, I've just mainly come out of thinking that was really boring.
Well, that's social realism for you, Graham.
Well, yeah, I guess.
Not to colour any expectations to upcoming social realist directors, but yeah, I kind of find it.
But I want to like Lee Chang-dong. He is so loved by so many people whose opinions I respect very much that it does slightly bother me that I have never clicked with his work. So I'll be on the next one, is what I'm saying, even if it's just for moral support.
Well, hi, I'm Larry Cohen, and this must be Trailers from Hell. And you're about to see a trailer that really comes from hell. This is from my first movie, Bone, a film with a wonderful cast headed by Yaphet Kotto and Joyce Van Patten, Gina Berlin, and Andrew Duggan. Wonderful actors. Had a great time making the film. It was a black comedy about a rapist breaking into a house in Beverly Hills and finding out that the family that he is taking hostage hates each other, and each member of the family wants him to kill the other one. So it was a comedy. And unfortunately for us, the distributor that picked it up was a wonderful guy named Jack H. the Blob Harris. But he saw the picture as a drama. He thought he could sell the picture as a dramatic film, so he advertised it as tougher than Shaft, meaner than Superfly. And so there was a comedy being sold as a drama, which kind of confused the audience when they came in. So this trailer, probably more than anything else, helped destroy the picture.
What do you want? Don't let me do it again, please.
So now you see Yaphet Kotto and Joyce Van Patten. Here's the alternate title, Housewife. When he released the picture first and didn't do much business, he put a new title on it and called it Housewife. So I guess Desperate Housewife would have been a better title, but at any rate, that's how it came out. Then he was trying to sell it as a sex movie. Even though, and here he put all the sexy scenes in here, the attempted rape and all that kind of stuff. Once again, trying to totally mislead the audience into seeing something that they weren't going to see, and giving no idea that this could possibly be a comedy. So here we have Andrew Duggan being chased by a car, running for his life. All the scenes showing desperation, terror, fear, sex. There it is, freeze frame housewife. And here we go, sending a movie into oblivion.
Don't come calling me names, lady. I'm just a big black butt doing what's expected of him.
Again, it's another left turn here. I don't know how I can relate social realism to 1972's Born, but I guess
surrealism.
In the only sense it's social realism is it's
social surrealism, isn't it?
It's mostly shot at his house. So, yeah. Mostly shot at his house. That's the only connection I can find there, really.
What was it? Oh man, every time I see a film that's shot in the director's house, it just makes me angry that they have such great houses. Eat the rich.
Well, I'll take a swing at the plot of this.
Mm-hmm.
Or I really shouldn't, because I don't remember actors' names except the ones I like. But there's a rich white married couple in the... I guess it's implied as being Hollywood. I think it's a well-to-do couple.
Beverly Hills. Bone, A Bad Day in Beverly Hills.
He's a... second-hand cars he sells it, but he's a salesman. He's on TV. He's got a bit of a personality. He's got a bit of a reputation around the area as an on-screen icon for a car dealership. And then Yaphet Kotto turns up, Born, and he throws all sorts of spanners into the work. He gets a rat out of the drainage system of the pool initially. That's how he makes the first contact. And he demands payment, going to really rather extreme lengths to get it, which leads the movie to this fracture point where Bourne stays with his wife and the car dealer goes off into Beverly Hills too. The idea is to get money, but it doesn't quite go that way.
It really doesn't, no. Yeah. I would not send this guy on an errand. But Bourne, when he first appears, he just materialises, doesn't he? They're complaining about the dead rat in the pool. They say that someone needs to come and sort it, and then suddenly Bourne just materialises. He just somehow appears by the pool, which is your first hint that there is something very strange about this dude.
Yeah, well, there's a hint that there's something very strange about the film in the very first scene with the advert for the car dealership, in which Bill's walking around a scrapyard trying to advertise the cars, but every car that he looks at has a badly burned or mutilated dead body in it.
It's a great scene, that. I love the particularly horrible detail that the first body he sees has like these massive braces on. I wondered if that was a slight inspiration for the bit with the product recalls in Fight Club, where they find the kid's braces melted onto the ashtray after a car fire.
I don't remember that bit, to be honest.
It's been a long time since I've seen Fight Club, but I think the thing that stands out here, compared to like God Told Me To at least, is it has quite a ambitious editing style, doesn't it? It's not shot in a linear way. It'll constantly flip between these little images, like maybe the dog or maybe the dead bodies, like you say. It's kind of a skittish thing.
Yeah.
In the way it's being put together.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm really glad that we chose to watch this because I've not seen it before, and you know my general opinion of Larry Cohen was, as I've said, kind of middling. This is brilliant. His first film is brilliant. It's so good. It's exactly the sort of just weird 70s shit that I love. What struck me, I don't know if you've seen the 2010 Spanish film Kidnapped, or I can't remember what it is in Spanish, Secuestrados or something like that. Anyway, Kidnapped.
No,
it's a home invasion film. Big home is invaded by guys who are going to potentially rape the women, and one of them goes off into town with the bloke, with the man of the house, to get some money. So it's basically the same setup, but it's so different. It's so much more playful. It's a comedy.
mean, it is, but he's constantly threatening rape. It's kind of a miraculous balancing act, really.
Yeah, I mean, it could only have been made in the 70s.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it twists on its head in many different ways, really, where it's one of these movies where maybe it's designed as a metaphor, as an analogy for something else, or maybe it's all a dream. It's... even Bourne, as Graham said, though, he just appears and he just disappears. I mean, I'm not even sure whether Bourne's real, to be honest. It's such a... No,
I didn't take it at face value, as in, narratively, this is exactly what happened to these people. I just think it's a satire. What it reminded me of is Putney Swope.
Yeah.
But I mean, with especially towards the end when it goes into things about advertising. But generally, the whole kind of the playful but controversial way that it treads ideas of racial issues, class issues, marriage is an issue in this. Even just like stereotypes themselves and what Bone as a black man in Beverly Hills is expected to act like.
Yes, that's one of the crucial things, isn't it? Because he says at one point that he acts like this because white people expect him to.
Yeah.
And the film makes that almost literally true. Like we say, he appears and disappears. He might be literally a figment of their imagination. And it has this way of taking metaphors that maybe aren't that original, but they're rarely treated as literally and as forcefully as this, and that makes it really interesting, I think.
I mean, in the King Cohen, Yaphet Kotto interviews in it, and he said he didn't play it as a black character. He played it as a force of nature, effectively.
You can get that. Yeah, I love Yaphet Kotto. I think he's amazing.
I don't know what he'd been in before this. I think this had been quite an early role for him, but it's an incredible performance, really.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's got, you have to play something that is continually ambiguous, which is very difficult. There's no baseline to Bourne. You can't, use the old actor's cliche of saying, what's my motivation? Because the point is that it should be completely inscrutable.
Yes.
Yeah, well, he's just a big black buck that's doing what's expected of him. That's what he says.
That's the line, yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's a fantastic film. In terms of things that it reminded me of, a couple of... one slightly superficial one and one that is maybe cuts a bit deeper, but I was amused to see that it does the old throwing the cigarette out of the car window and then realising it's closed gag before the Big Lebowski did it. But the other thing I was thinking is, am I crazy, or would this make a pretty good double bill with The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Miss Osborne?
That's a pull, Graham. Bloody hell.
I mean, I don't think it would, because that Borovich film is it was completely different in tone, isn't it?
Completely different in tone.
Kind of see where you're going, with
but
sexual
I think
politics stuff.
The core idea of having this intruder in the home whose task is not to really achieve anything because he's only a projection of someone else's imagination, but his task is to expose the kind of sexual and political and social hypocrisies of everyone in the house. That is similar, I think, even if tonally, you're right, it is attacked in massively different ways.
Yes. So I like the bit where, I like it all, but I especially like the bit where Bill goes into town to withdraw some money from the bank and meets, is it 2 or 3 very strange women? 3, I think.
There's the woman at the bar who's talking about a conspiracy of dentists.
Yep.
And then
Yes.
he meets Jeannie Berlin, who of course would later have a cameo in Inherent Vice, which is a movie about a conspiracy of dentists.
Oh, really?
Oh, really? Oh,
how's that for a link?
That'd make a really good double bill, actually. Born in Inherent Vice, that'd be
actually
really good.
Yeah.
But that's the sort of thing that I like, these side things that don't really amount to anything. The colour that he's put into this, the world building.
The girl, what's her name? The girl he meets in the supermarket. Well, he goes to the supermarket with her.
It's in the bank, isn't it, where she's like, got to get new checkbooks. Yeah.
Her. Yeah, she's great. what's her name? That's Jeannie Berlin.
That's
right.
Jeannie Berlin, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, she's just listed as the girl. But she's so much fun, isn't she?
Yeah, absolutely.
Complete fucking wild card and live wire. Like, what's she doing? Stealing food stamps out of people's cars and then robbing from the supermarket anyway.
Yes.
It's great. And then when she and Bill eventually have sex, nice cut to a radio aerial on a car going up. It's not afraid to be cheesy, this film, in places.
It's got some very overt jokes like that, but there's also some remarkably weird and sophisticated ones. I love the first scene where Bourne enters the house and he's showing them round, and they're clearly feeling really threatened by him. But the soundtrack is like they're showing him around.
Yeah.
They're the estate agents showing him around a new home, and that's a kind of satire that I can't say I've ever seen before. Where you have,
I didn't even notice that, to be honest.
Oh, it's so good, because I was like, what's going on here? And then I noticed that her mouth wasn't moving. She's not actually saying this stuff we're hearing her say. It's just this kind of estate agent voice in her head, or probably not even in her head. Just probably Larry Cohen fucking around, doing something interesting and funny.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing I like about this. I mean, I never noticed any of that. Often with first movies, you have pure unbridled vision from what that director wants to be and where he wants that career to go.
Oh, It reminded me of Murder a la Mode, and also to an extent High Mom, those early Brian De Palma films, what those directors were doing back then. And it was interesting to see in the documentary King Cohen, Martin Scorsese talk about Larry Cohen like they used to hang out, which it makes sense that he was also part of that set, the Scorsese, Coppola, De Palma set, because they all made their weird early films that have got this kind of surrealist edge and a disregard for the conventions of cinema, your refusal to play by the rules, and then they all went on to have careers where they're kind of to a greater or less extent, one foot in Hollywood and one foot in the independent stream. And some of them made brilliant films, and Larry Cohen made what he's made. But
he made It's
Bone,
Alive.
what a belter to start with.
Yeah.
But it's a pure vision, and it feels like everything that he made after this was a reaction to something that was happening. This is just him being pure Larry Cohen. And
satire. Satire runs through his entire scripting filmography, definitely.
Yeah. And that was part of why, I'd always wanted to see more of his work, but I'd never got around to it. But I was awakened to it because he was one of those horror directors like George A. Romero, who was always talked about in terms of, they work as horror movies, but if you dig deeper, there's something, that he's saying underneath it. And as a massive pseudo, I was obviously interested in that.
At least he never had the audacity like William Friedkin does to call himself a documentary filmmaker. That always rubbed me the wrong way, that one did. But as far as this, he's pure to his intentions, I think. In King Kong, he apparently he does stretch the truth a little bit about what he did or didn't do on set.
Oh?
Yeah, I think it was, what movie was it? Some movie where he claimed I do the stunts first. And I did it and then jumped out the car. And I can't remember who it was, one of his blaxploitation.
It was Fred Williamson again.
Yeah, Fred Williamson. And Fred Williamson said, no, that's bullshit. He didn't do anything of the sort. So he's kind of got his own little mythos around him.
You need people like that, though. I think my major problem with cinema now is that there just aren't enough grand-scale Orson Welles level bullshitters working as directors anymore.
You have to be, really, to come up with the sheer number of ideas that he churned out over the years.
Yeah.
He's an ideas man. I'll give him that. He's an ideas man. It's just what happens after the idea bit doesn't always work. What you said earlier about how he was really great at choosing composers for his films. There's something about the music in the sex scene in Bone that is unfortunately sounds a lot like rumbling stomachs at best and big old farts at worst during the sex scene.
That is, I had to look this up because the score is very eccentric. I think it works, but it's very weird, and it's by a guy called Jill Melee, who worked with a lot of jazz artists who, as a non-jazz fan, I think are made up. I refuse to believe that there is such a person as Zoot Sims, and I refuse to believe there is such a person as Ed Thigpen.
Hold on. Ed Thigpen?
It's a thick pen. It's like pig pen, but with TH instead of the first P.
Oh. Okay.
Rubbish. Absolutely non-existent.
Yeah, so closing thoughts on this one before we look at what we thought of Larry Cohen as a whole. So, yeah, what do we think of Born? I think we all sort of in agreement here that it's excellent, really.
I just fucking love it, yeah. And all of those, like, 70s... quirks in the direction and the editing, I think, still feel really fresh today.
Yeah.
There's so few people who are doing anything that builds on that.
Yeah, it's best Coen film I've seen. I wonder what the significance is in all the three lead characters having names beginning with B. Bill, Bernadette, and Bone.
I suppose just suggesting a kinship that they might have arisen from each other. Yeah.
So we talked a lot about what we think of Larry Cohen, but just to put like a ribbon around it, what do we all think of Larry Cohen? Maybe off the back of these two movies, or maybe off the back of his filmography as a whole? I
feel I should investigate his thrillers rather than his horror films from now on. Maybe he was better at doing thrillers and more realistic stuff.
Well, I found this really rewarding. Like I say, I'd only seen the stuff that he'd written before, but I enjoyed both of these films. Like I say, a few misgivings about God Told Me To, but, you know, there is just something about the raggediness and the flaws of it that actually make it quite enjoyable in a strange way. And Bone, I just fucking loved it. I think it's great. Yeah, I mean, I largely agree. It's the guerrilla nature of his productions that I think elevates him past. If he was doing these within the studio system, I don't think any of his films would have had the same sort of... Well, for one, I don't think they'd be made in the studio system. The ideas that he came up with are just a bridge too far. Like, the religious horror of God Told Me To, no studio would ever dare even look at that. It's just controversy squared, that one. But yeah... Well, like is mentioned in the documentary, Warner Brothers were very wary about... Was it God Told Me To that they were very wary about? And he was like, yes, but you released The Exorcist. Ah, yeah. You released The Devils. Yeah, that operating outside the studio system, just, I want to make a movie, so I'm go out and make it. I think it's created some icons of cinema, really. He's kind of a Roger Corman level character in my eyes, not in the sense of the crazy start. Just, he's at the cusp of all of these things. He sets things moving before they've even had a time to be thought of in sort of a wider industry. And I think he's really interesting as that sort of first past the post guy. Yeah, absolutely. That goes back to what I was saying about God Told Me To, that there are ideas in there that would be absolutely done to death 20 years later, but there is still a real fascination in seeing someone do them 2 decades before they were meant to be done. Yeah, I could have done with more Born and less It's Alive lore, let's be honest. I don't know what he was thinking there. I just took a couple of notes about King Cohen, the documentary. At the start, when Joe Dante turns up to do a talking head bit, I thought, I bet you anything John Landis is next. And he was. So I wonder, does John Landis get a tip-off that Joe Dante's doing an interview somewhere? And he's like, right, I'll have some of that. And get himself down to the studio, knock on the door, go, me next. Because you never see those two like in separate documentaries. They're always on one after the other. Also, Larry Cohen reminded me a lot of Marty Funkhauser from Curb Your Enthusiasm. And Michael Moriarty today looks just like Pat Gibson from Eggheads. Like exactly like him. I kind of wish we did a movie with Michael Moriarty, because those movies that he's in with Larry Cohen are just something else. Just Michael Moriarty is an interesting lead actor because he's so incredibly ordinary looking that it's simultaneously fascinating and really boring. Yeah, it sort of goes out the other way and becomes so ordinary, it's weird. It's like he gave Gary from Accounts like all of the cocaine. He's just
Weird human being. In the good
But he
way.
doesn't look that ordinary anymore. Now looks like Pat Gibson from Eggheads.
Apparently, he's like a really accomplished jazz player, though. To go back to jazz.
Oh, wow. Maybe he worked with Ed Thigpen.
Maybe he did. We can but dream. Cliff, where can we find you on the internet?
Devil Times 5 horror podcast. DX5, no, sorry, that's not right. Devil X5 on Twitter. Smogo is my personal account, SMOGO.
Graham, and yourself?
I'm on Letterboxd under my actual name, Graham Williamson. I'm on Twitter at Graham W Film. I also write for Horrified.com, the British horror website, and the Geek Show, of course. I do the Pop Screen podcast.
Hi, I'm Annie Hardy, and you're watching Vancar. Another day in paradise. Hello?
Listen, I just need you to take my friend somewhere nearby.
This is Angela. Her and I taking a trip. Oh, did you find me? Oh.
Shit.
You should go see if she's alright.
Hello? Hello? She found us! She's here!
What? Hey, what was that?
Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, what the
Where are you going? Where are you going?
So, that's the first part of the show done and dusted, where we talked about Larry Cohen. Now we're in the final stretch where I invite some new guests on and we talk about some of the movies we've been watching. I've been joined this week by Kat. Hello.
Hi.
First timer, Larry. Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
And Andy.
All right, how are you doing?
So, how is every... Well, yeah, I can't really answer 3 quick questions simultaneously. So how are you all doing?
I mean, half term is over, so I am happy. Yeah, she had an extra inset day, so today was her first day back. So it was like, finally, I can be in a house that's quiet, which was quite nice.
Yeah, I remember travelling through York on a half term before, and I think that might have been the closest vision to hell that I've ever experienced. Because it already takes about 50... There's like this one road where it has like these tiny little doors where you think, who lives there? Why are the doors so small? Because they're like about 5 foot like to the top of the door. It always amuses me. But yeah, that road, it takes forever to get down on a half term. Okay, so things we've been watching. Kat, would you like to go first?
Yeah, so cinema, it has been Maverick and Men, 2 very different films. I mean, Maverick, it's so much better than I mean, I grew up like liking Top Gun. I know a lot of people didn't and have come to it now and have been like, oh, it's a terrible film. But I grew up with a friend who was obsessed with Val Kilmer, so we had to watch Top Gun, and it has like a soft spot in my heart. And I wasn't necessarily expecting much from Maverick, but I think it did a really good job at continuing on from the original whilst also making it into something that modern audiences can enjoy. I mean, I was at the press screening and there was like three boys in front of me who were about like 10 to 13. I was like, they're not going to like this. They're not going to like this. This is, it's anything like the first one. But they were like cheering and clapping and whooping and like really getting into it. They weren't so much of a fan of Jennifer Connelly and like the love story aspect of it, because they were young boys. There was like one who was very young who literally covered his eyes because he didn't want to see that. But that was a lot of fun. And then Men, I know, has been quite polarizing, but I think I need to see it a second time. But I think so far I'm on the team. I quite liked it. It did some stuff that I wasn't expecting. There's a couple of like proper what the fuck moments. There's some interesting gore effects that I wasn't necessarily ready to see. it nearly made me sick, which doesn't happen very often. It's the sound design. There's a lot of like wet and sort of sticky. The only film to make me feel like that prior to that was a film called Baskin. There was a scene with like some toads in a bucket, and they were all sort of squelching, and that just turned my stomach. And Men sort of tapped into that sound design.
There is a thing like that in Brain Dead as well, isn't there? With the custard that people really do not like. But honestly, I cannot remember that scene for anything at all. Honestly,
I think I was in a small studio screen for Men, so I think the sound was sort of all around me. Yeah. But I mean, Jessie Buckley and Rory Kinnear are just both at the top of the game in this film, and it looks beautiful, and it's got a great score, great sound design. So I like it, but I know many people that did not like it.
That's putting it politely, yes.
Yeah.
I have to back that up with Baskin. That is some of the squelchiest movie making I've seen for a long time, and the most violent as well. It's crazy. Great movie though, but crazy.
It has been forgotten a little bit, and since it's been made, it kind of just went off the radar completely.
Yeah. I think it's on. I think it might actually be on Prime, not Shudder, if I remember correctly. So
I think it might be. I think I saw that the other day.
Yeah,
Prime has the weirdest things on it.
Yeah, it does.
The Hell House movies and but yeah, I myself, I saw Maverick as well, and I watched Top Gun the morning before I went to see Maverick because I'd never seen Top Gun, and I was a bit of trepidation because I thought Top Gun was okay, but Maverick was fantastic. Especially that last 20 minutes, half an hour, the tension.
I don't know whether I can say it like this, but you kind of have to when you're talking about Top Gun. But the original is very gay.
Yes, it's very erotic.
Yeah,
it is incredibly homoerotic. Is Maverick? I guess is my question.
No, not in the same leagues. It's much more of a father-son dynamic between Tom Cruise and Miles Teller's character. Although there's a character called Hangman who, in my eyes, is a perfect blend of Maverick and Iceman, and is almost like, in another timeline, maybe those guys, did get together and adopted a kid and brought him up, and that is who Hangman grew up to be.
Good show.
Head cannons are the best cannons. So, Larry, what have you been watching?
I've actually been watching a lot of older stuff, but when I went to cinema and seen Dashcam, again, a most polarising movie at the moment everybody's talking about. All the kind of controversy with View Cinemas and them getting piled on because they just said it's not going to make money, and we've got Top Gun coming out, so let's just...
Didn't they say it was like too controversial or too upsetting or something?
I think at the beginning they said something. Rob Savage came out and said that with a screenshot saying it was they didn't like it, or said it wasn't when they did staff screenings. It said it wasn't a movie they would like to show or continue or to start showing in the cinemas, so they kind of pulled it. But I think View have kind of come out since then and said, well, no, that's not strictly true. Whoever said that is not accurate. We just didn't think it would make any money, so we just didn't see the point in putting it on. And same, I think, with obviously Sunday, what Kat was saying earlier before we're recording, obviously Sunday World War, they're not showing it, Odeon are not showing it. So I think they're getting a little bit of a bad rep View for just making a business decision, basically. That's what they are, a business at the end of the day. But I've seen it, and because I really loved Host, I really enjoyed it. I thought that was actually generally scary. For somebody who's been watching horror movies for the best part of 20 odd years, maybe more than that, and 30 odd years maybe now at this point. I really loved that film, so I was quite excited to go and see Dashcam, and then unfortunately I just wasn't a fan. It just was just very... It's hard to get past the main character, and I think that because she's quite grating in the movie, because she's very anti-woke, very Trumpish, those kind of conservative types you see on Twitter. We all have to listen to Jordan Peterson and watch Joe Rogan on a Monday of a day, basically. So it's hard to get past that, really. Her being so annoying, and then originally it's really cool, and there's definitely some cool bits in it where, you know, a hall of mirrors and some kind of cool horror visuals. But apart from that, I just wasn't very enthused by it. It wasn't, when I came out of the movie, I was like, I feel a bit flat. Maybe I might watch it again on demand and see if I can get past that kind of hate of her, basically, and see if I can kind of enjoy it. But
it worked without her, basically. Do you think?
I think if it would have worked a little bit better if she didn't have that dialed up to the maximum.
Yeah.
If you understood, when me and Andy both watched it over the weekend, and we discussed about the fact that there's no arc to it. There just is, like, she's just this level of human the whole way through it. So there's no change in tone. It's like, oh, she's an arsehole, and that continues to be that way the whole way through the movie, which is, I suppose, great if you like that kind of thing and you want to have a sort of, where it's like there's no redemption. She just is this. She is arsehole, and that is, she's in this box forever. But it's an enjoy. I think people have been enjoying it. I think a lot of people, I've seen a lot of people online enjoying it, but it just wasn't my thing, really.
That's okay.
I think the thing that I found quite difficult about it was the actual. So it's Annie, and I forget her surname.
Hardy.
Annie Hardy.
But it's like an extreme version of her, and it's an extreme version of her views.
Yeah.
She does hold kind of anti-vax, kind of COVID conspiracy style views, which, if you know that going in beforehand, can be quite difficult. And I'd heard about that because obviously I think it was it last year at Fright Fest it kind of premiered about.
It was at London Film Festival.
London Film Festival,
right? That's where I caught it.
So was that like maybe September, October? Was it?
Yeah, like October time, yeah.
Yeah. And it came out about the whole kind of controversy about her. So being as we are, we look up things on the internet and you do see kind of controversial views from her and kind of seeing that dialed up. I don't think she's as extreme in real life as she is in the movie. But for me, that was what really got to me about it. Like it was quite a hard sell that way.
I agree with that. I think
curious, really, when you think of a horror movie as controversial. That's not where your brain goes automatically.
No, it doesn't. No, that's why when that first screenshot came out with Rob Savage about View saying alluding to it being controversial, I was like, whoa, well, what is it? And I expected to see something so controversial. Then you realise, oh, it's just her. That's it. That's the controversy, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, they went from like creating the Spice Girls of horror in Host to like Donald Trump in a dress, which is it's a lot to get your head in. But I caught it at London Film Festival with a big crowd, like Jed Shepherd and a couple of the other guys that were in it and made it were in the audience, and it went down a treat there. But I'm not quite sure how it would go if you're just sat on your own watching it.
Yeah.
On VOD, I think you definitely need like a bit of crowd participation.
That's good.
That was one of the questions he had for it, really, because I think Host works better when you watch it on a monitor.
Yeah.
Because it plays into the whole idea of it being on like a Zoom call.
Yeah, it works like that because you're watching it, you're sort of, I think it pulls you into the movie, but you're sitting, like that's what I did. I watched it on my laptop here in front of me just now, so it pulls you into the movie because you're almost like interacting with it a little bit. Yeah, so it's a bit, it's very clever that way.
In terms of the writing I thought was actually really good. There's a lot of kind of snappy lines, and the way it kind of develops as a movie is tense, and there is like horrifically graphic moments. It's totally different ball game for Host. It's like hyper violent. But if Annie Hardy is playing the character, I think, to a T, so she is doing a really good performance, but it's just not, for me, bearable, to be honest, to put it bluntly. Like, I don't think it's not necessarily a criticism, but it's also quite hard to kind of separate yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Andy, what have you been watching?
I mean, I've watched quite a bit of things. I've done a few rewatches. I've got an episode on a podcast I'm doing soon, and so I've been doing Tarantino rewatches. Rewatched Pulp Fiction, Inglourious Bastards, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Also watched Maverick, which was fantastic, as we've discussed, and I watched Dashcam as well. I've been watching quite a lot of TV recently. That's been my kind of go-to.
It is allowed.
Is that okay?
And there is a lot. There's a lot of it out there at the moment as well, isn't there?
There's so much. Like one of the things I've been watching has been the Obi-Wan series, which has been great. Massive Star Wars fan, and especially after the disappointment of Book of Boba Fett, getting something that actually feels like a Star Wars.
Yeah,
kind of.
I have heard the theory that show is better if you watch it understanding that he is the bad guy.
Boba Fett?
Yeah. I don't know if it works or if it holds up, but I've heard that theory.
If you watch it understanding that he's the bad guy, you'll say, why is he a bad guy? Because he's really fucking boring and he doesn't do anything.
Fair enough.
The best bits of Book of Boba Fett were the 2 episodes in which you never see Boba Fett. There's 2 episodes in the middle of it where Boba Fett isn't in it. And then I finished the latest season of Ozark, which I've loved the whole story, and in the last 20 minutes, half an hour, really pissed me off, and not in a good way. Without giving spoilers away, I thought it was a bit of fluff. And then the best thing that's ever been on telly is Stranger Things, which has just been fantastic from start to finish of season 4. It's technically not finished.
No, I mean, there's 2 episodes left, isn't there? The 2 big old 2-hour plus ones.
Yeah, I think episode 9, I think it's 2.5 hours. I don't know about episode 8, but I remember reading about episode 9. But
yeah.
I think you won't see, in terms of this season of Stranger Things, I think you'll struggle to see better telly anywhere else, and especially episode 4. Like, it's been spoken about. It's the finale episode 4, and it's the reason Kate Bush is trouble in the charts again in terms of that song. It's just spectacular and really high stakes in it, even though you kind of feel maybe there won't be any real, what's the word I'm looking for? Any real, take a blank?
Like any stakes?
Aye, I don't want to say stakes again there, but any real stakes. Let's go for that.
On that, I mean, the only characters who die are secondary ones.
Yeah.
Or fake outs with like primary ones.
Yeah, that's aye. But I think you still get the element of it that it feels like something could happen, especially because it's coming to the end.
It is allowed to have low stakes because what it is essentially like a gateway for sort of tweens to get into horror.
Yeah.
You don't want to be killing off all of the favourite characters because that would just scare them off horror for life, basically.
Yeah. But I mean, we must be coming on to, 7 years since the first series? 7, 8 years? Because it's been 3 years since series 3. So there's a lot of kind of investment in it. Even when it's not been on, you're still looking forward to that. And I just think, I think the episode 4 and then the kind of, if you want to call it mid-season finale, I just thought were 2 fantastic bits of television.
I'll be honest, I've struggled with Stranger Things.
Okay.
I thought the first season was amazing. Second season, okay. Third season, I found annoying.
All right, okay.
I just kind of drifted away from it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be absolutely upfront and honest, I think it's kind of gross how every episode costs £30 million to make. But that's not the series, that's the industry behind it. So,
yeah. Have you watched series 4?
No, I mean, we watched it with me niece, who's she's 18 and she's trying to get into horror to fit in. She watched the first episode where like the creature comes down the stairs. I don't know what significance that has to the later series. I don't know if that's a spoiler or not. And she was hiding behind her hands and crying. So, yeah, I don't think we're watching it again for a while.
I think, for me, I don't know how the rest of these feel, but for me, season 4 is on a par, if not better than the first one. Like, I just think everything about it. I've not been bored. I've been totally invested. But 2 I didn't like, but 3 I really liked, and then 4 I think it's taking it to another level. But I think it's because they know they're getting to an end game type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I was the same as you, Rob. I sort of 2 and 3, I was a bit like on the fence with, sort of just going with it because I had been watching it. But I've seen the first 3 episodes of series 4. I've got the good one coming up, and like I really enjoyed the first episode. I think it was a nice sort of return to form. It was a little bit long, in my opinion, but that's just because I've got so much other stuff I need to watch, and it takes a lot of time up to fit an episode in these days.
Yeah, I was the same as well. I loved the first one. Second and third series, I was a bit not as into. So when this came around, I was like, I was adamant I wasn't going to watch it at all. But unfortunately, my girlfriend just suggested it over dinner. Was like, let's just watch an episode and see what it's like. And now, after episode 4, she's now went away to America for 2 weeks, so now I can't even watch it until she comes back in another week. So yeah, after episode 4, as Andy said, it's like, right, okay, I'm in again. You've got me again now, so we might as well just carry on. And obviously because one of my horror heroes, is in it as well. For as long as he lasts, because although Andy's a bit further than I am probably, so he might know a bit more about what happens to him than I do. But with Robert Englund being in it, which is obviously not a spoiler at all, he's obviously in it, which is pretty cool. So seeing Freddy Krueger in a TV show, a horror TV show as well, which is lending a lot of stuff from the Freddy movies. Sorry, I should say Friday the 13th. Watching that in the brain now. The Freddy movies, I think just really cool. So I'm excited to see more of him in the show and see how he develops.
You swayed me. I think I'll give it another shot.
If you're up to date with it, like, if you've seen 1 to 3, like, I would definitely say, especially the ending to, like, I was kind of a bit. Episode 1 was happening, and I was watching it, and it was kind of just going on in front of me. And then the way episode 1 finishes, which is so brutal, like, it is when this season they have went full on, like, gory horror, which I don't think. I mean, they've had some gore and they've had some blood and things like that in it, but the ending to episode 1, I just kind of went, oh fuck, right, yep, here we go.
There's a bit in season 3. I don't know whether any of you have seen it, but it was like Revenge, a bit where they dig the blade of glass out of the sole of a foot. There's a bit in season 3 that reminded me of that, where they pull something out of Eleven's leg.
Oh yeah.
Right.
I know you're talking.
I'll just say her name anyway, just so I've got it on. Revenge. Remember Revenge? Yes.
Yeah, I know that film.
Nobody's going to help me with pronunciation.
I don't know. Right, sorry. I was saying the bit where she's chasing the guy and he's got the glass in the sole of his foot.
Like it. She's very brutal with them. Yeah.
I can't remember the actress's name.
Yeah, it's about with the can of beer that gets me in Revenge. Which is like kind of slightly burning it onto her leg. I'm like,
oh right, yeah.
That bit.
Well, one movie that I have watched, I think it's out on the 10th on Arrow Play, is The Righteous from Mark O'Brien, which is going to divide audiences, I think, because there's an expectation when you think of Arrow Video of it being sort of like cult movies, whether it's comedy or sci-fi, thriller, horror, whatever. And this isn't really any of them. This is a slow-paced, horror-adjacent drama about an elderly married couple who their surrogate daughter, I guess, the daughter that they're adopted, basically, is killed. And a few days later, somebody turns up on the doorstep, played by the director, and he's got an injured leg at first, so they look after him, and eventually, because they're looking for somebody to fill in that hole in their life, that's one reading of it anyway, they sort of take him under their wing and let him live there and fill that gap in their life. But why is he there? It turns out that he is basically a walking, talking subtext for dealing with grief and the sort of, how would I put this, the guilt of past mistakes. I think it's brilliantly acted. It does a thing similar to what's it called from last year, Shiver Baby did, in a sense. It has this amazing gothic score which just elevates it through the roof, I think. But yeah, it all comes down to, I mean, Kat talked about Men earlier, and this is a similar movie in one regard. It's a film which is text as subtext, so it's a film about this one thing. And if you can get on with films that say, like, this ghost represents regret or infidelity or consumerism or something. If you can get on board with films like that, I think there's a lot to like in The Righteous. But if you don't, I think honestly it may piss you off a little bit because it's like sort of 1960s, 1950s Swedish cinema, like Ingmar Bergman and Carl Theodor Dreyer and people like that. So it's not for everybody, but very, very interesting for those people who maybe get on with it.
Yeah, it's black and white as well, isn't it? It's black and white, and there's just like the 3 or 4 characters, and it was all in like a cabin, like a little cottage or whatever in the woods. I think I caught it back at Fantasia last year, so my memory's a little hazy with it. But yeah, it's very talk heavy. I think they also bring in a lot of like stuff from the Bible, good, evil, all of that stuff. So yeah, it's not your Arrow video, like the Reanimator series. It's much more of a contemplative sort of psychological drama almost.
When I think of religious horror, I think of stuff like The Omen, for example. It's not even at that level. It is theological debate rather than the demons are going to come and get you and you have to kill a child at a certain time or you're raised through the world of politics or something. I don't know. but The Righteous is interesting, but it's clearly a niche product.
Does it feel anything like, from what I'd seen from it, like Relic? Is it along those lines?
Similar sort of stock, yeah.
Right.
Because that's a movie where the ghost represents Alzheimer's, if I remember correctly.
Aye, I think so, aye.
So similar style, but this is a bit more gothic, a bit more weird, I guess.
Right, okay.
Okay, so is there anything that anybody else has in the back pocket that they want to talk about?
And I've just been doing a lot of rewatches. I think I've signed up to the same podcast as Andy, because I have been watching Natural Born Killers and True Romance for my Tarantino thing. So I think I'm doing like so he wrote or was involved with the script, but didn't actually go on to direct. But it's just an excuse for me to talk about True Romance. So I've been quite happily watching the Arrow 4K restoration. Which
I've never actually seen that one. I think that's the one Tarantino project that I've not seen.
True Romance is amazing.
Yeah,
and what's the car one? Death Proof. Death Proof. Yeah, that's the one. Them two are the ones that are my blind spots.
Yeah, I would say True Romance is probably your better bet.
Yeah, I mean,
they're both good. I like Death Proof as well.
Yeah, it's obviously it's Arrow have now got it, so it's being looked after. But it's Christian Slater and Patricia Arquette in the lead characters. But then the rest of the cast, you've got Dennis Hopper, Christopher Walken, Gary Oldman, Samuel L. Jackson's in it briefly, Brad Pitt's in it briefly, Val Kilmer's in it, even though you never see his face, you just hear his voice. Okay. Chris Penn. Bronson Pinchot, Michael Rappaport. It's just full of so many people. Even like just like little extras. There's a woman in the bar at the beginning who was the mother of the teenage girl in The Crow. One of the gangsters is one of the henchmen in The Crow. There's just like so many people in it that have gone on to like be in other things that you recognize them from. So it's worth it just from that. But then the story as well is, as this couple meet, fall in love, and accidentally come into possession of some cocaine and decide to try and sell it to a big Hollywood producer. And, there's various criminal elements after them, and they all sort of entwine together whilst still maintaining this like love story between these two sort of kindred spirits. It's about as romantic a film as I will go for. I'm not a rom-com girl. Like, I need my romantic story to have like some blood and death like scattered in there somewhere.
That sort of era, that era of Christine Slater was just amazing as well. Yeah. Heathers too is another great movie.
The first time I saw Heathers, I recorded it off of the TV. It's when my love of Christian Slater started. But I'm old. My video cassette didn't have enough space, and it cut off at the ending. And if you've seen Heathers, towards the end, he has like an explosive pack attached to him, and he puts his arms in the air, and the camera pans up, and that's when my VCR cut out. So I didn't know what happened to him for about 3 years until me and my friend managed to track down a copy of it in like our local Woolworths. And then I frantically ran home to watch it and then was very disappointed by what happened to JD. It was not a good time.
Yeah, you have convinced me to catch up with True Romance there, I think.
Yeah, it's really good.
Aye. It's the one he sold to fund Reservoir Dogs, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was, I was speaking to Rob the other week about a Takashi Miike movie, and that First Love had a very similar feel to True Romance. And yeah, it's just a classic.
Converted. I'll give it a back.
Oh, you have to watch it. Even though Gary Oldman's character might be a bit problematic now. But
yeah, that might be a bit strange. But there's one scene with Christopher Walken, which is like one of the best scenes in the movie, I would say.
Yeah.
It's just...
Yeah, just Christopher Walken and Dennis Hopper just talking.
Yeah. It's an amazing...
I think it's like the best scene in Thief is just James Caan talking in a cafe. So
yeah.
I'm not surprised to hear that sort of thing at all. Barry, Andy, anything else you've been watching you like to shout out?
I stupidly have said on our podcast that I'm now going to try and watch 365 movies by the end of the year. So I'm currently doing that. I'm at number 50 at the moment, which is not great, but
you've got a lot of catch up.
I've got a catching up to do, but I've been watching maybe like 2 or 3 movies a day. I watched 4 yesterday, so I'm also just now doing a first time watch of all the Friday the 13th movies, because I've never realised after I'd seen the first one on Friday the 13th this year that I'd only seen that and Jason X. So if you're going to see any of the two, we might as well see those two.
The best one.
Jason X is the best one, of course, absolutely. So I get to rewatch that at some point in the future, which is really great. This is exciting. But yeah, so I'm on number 5 now. So I'm looking forward to watching them. I know they sort of vary in quality the next couple of them but I think it starts getting a little bit more. I'm just really excited to watch Jason Goes to Manhattan. So cause I've heard so much stuff about that. It's been constantly talked about in kind of horror circles as being like this amazing movie, and I've seen so many bits of it. I'm quite excited about it, and also really excited about watching the remake. No,
I like the remake.
Andy's talking about the remake as well, but he said that different.
I don't think I've seen many Friday the 13th at all. I know I've seen one where there's a scene in something with I think he throws a climbing frame at somebody in one of them, and it's around a hospital. You know, memories get sort of distorted with every way you get from them, but that's the memory I have of it.
When you finish all of your Friday the 13th, you should check out it's a very long documentary, Crystal Lake Memories.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 6 hours long and it's across 2 discs, but it goes into like a lot of detail, especially with the later films like Jason X, Freddy vs. Jason, and the remake. It's got a lot of like really interesting like bits that you might not necessarily know about.
I'd be interested to watch that as well, because I watched the Never Sleep Again documentary, which I really liked, and the Hellraiser one, Leviathan, which is really good.
Yeah.
They both really, but again, Never Sleep Again is a real long one as well. I mean, it's maybe 3 or 4 hours, I think. Not as maybe long as the Jason one, but still quite lengthy. And I think the Leviathan's maybe like 2 or 3 hours as well. So when it appeals to me making documentaries, they're very thorough.
Yes.
If you want to really be sadistic and punish yourself, there's always Amityville. I don't know how many they've got of them now. They just keep on coming out.
Rob, because I need to do that now. You've called it the air now. I need to be like... I've only ever seen the Ryan Reynolds one, which is... I don't think you...
I've seen the original, and that's about it. I think there's at least a dozen of them.
Yeah, it must be at least.
There's one with Bella Thorne that's never been released. Yeah, there is, isn't there? There's a new one coming out. But there's one with Bella Thorne in that has never been released because it was a Weinstein project at the time that all of that came out. That was a company I used to work for. We had that on our acquisitions, and it just stayed there for the entire 2 years that I worked there, and it'd been there for about 3 years before that as well. That's nice. So that's never going to come out, I don't think.
Did you ever see it? No.
No, and I like Bella Thorne films seem to be my guilty pleasure. So I was all G'd up to watch it, but no. So I don't think we ever received the asset. It was just as soon as it gets released and it's through all this legal stuff, we'll get it. But it just never came in.
It's tarred with a bad brush now. So even if it was released, I don't know if you really want to watch it specifically, but maybe just not tell people about it. Maybe.
And Andy, you have anything? Anything else? Because you went through a lot there.
I did, I know. I'm going to go, actually after this, I'm going to go and rewatch, get 4K of Jurassic Park, because I'm going to go and see Dominion on Friday or Saturday, maybe. We watched, first time watched a Child's Play 2, which was interesting. Like, I quite enjoyed it. It was a fun movie. I've never seen Child's Play. I've only ever seen the Mark Hamill fronted remake, which was okay as well. But Child's Play 2 was good.
I've seen a few, and that's the one horror franchise that I just can't get into because it's a toy. It's just pull its arms off. I was so good at that as a child, so even if it's got a knife, just its arms straight off, no problem. What it's going to do is bite you to death.
Just kick it. Like you have the extra long limbs and this wee thing's running about. But yeah, I mean, it's over the top and ridiculous, but not particularly scary. But I really enjoyed Child's Play 2. What else have I seen? Doctor Strange, the recent Doctor Strange was another one. But
just on the issue with Amityville, I looked at an IMDb list, and there's at least 23.
23 Amityville movies.
I mean, that's a big chunk of the way for your 365. So
I suppose that's true. You know, all right, we'll just start watching them on a loop for eternity. No,
crazy.
There's a lot of them are going to be absolute awful, but there's 23.
Yeah, of course, that's 23. That's true. I'm sure they'll drop off very quickly.
Yes.
True.
I imagine so. But what was your take on Doctor Strange?
Me, I thought it was the best one since Endgame. I've struggled with the kind of latest Marvel or MCU movies in terms of getting any sort of engagement with them. I found them a bit boring. This one went places I didn't expect. It wasn't perfect. It was very much like a Sam Raimi movie where he makes great parts, but then sometimes it goes a bit scatty. And
that's fair of Raimi, I think.
It felt very much like that, but I definitely enjoyed it. I enjoyed the twists that they brought in. With in terms of horror elements, I mean, for the fact that it managed to pass as a 12, I thought it was quite interesting, because I don't think I would take kids to see it.
It was a bold step for Marvel then.
I mean, it's not. I'm not talking like Predator levels of violence or anything like that. But
it's Sam Raimi. He when he goes violent, he just doesn't do it a bit. He goes full violent.
Yeah, I mean, he does well, and there's quite, even without maybe violence, there's certainly disturbing elements to it. There's a scene in it that's very much like something for The Shining, like a chase scene that's very much something like that. But in terms of quality, it's probably the second best Marvel property since Endgame, with number one being Spider-Man. Personally, for me, anyway. But
they have been on a downward spiral, haven't they, recently?
Yeah,
I don't necessarily know if it's a downward spiral with Marvel. I mean, they're trying to introduce new characters, and I remember going to see things like Iron Man and Captain America and Thor, and going, "God, these are going to be shit," and they were better. But than what I expected them to be at the time. So I'm now going into things like Shang-Chi and even the Eternals. Well, I mean, I liked Eternals a lot more than a lot of people did. But things like Shang-Chi and introducing new characters and expecting more because of what I've had before, so then you're a bit disappointed. But when you go back and watch things like Thor and Iron Man, they're not, like, Iron Man's okay, Thor's quite poor, actually, the first one.
Yeah.
But because you've then built up that kind of love, and the movies have developed as you went on, maybe Shang-Chi in another 2 or 3 movies' time will be one of the favourites. Like, that's just the way it kind of is at the minute. Your expectations are kind of tempered initially with the Iron Man and things like that, but they're absolutely heightened post-Endgame.
Yeah. They have to do a lot of rebuilding, basically. So it's understandable that the quality might not be as fever pitch as it was with Endgame and whatnot.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that's everything from everybody, is it not?
I would say so. Mm-hmm.
Okay, excellent. So that's a wrap for this week's episode with Larry Cohen. We didn't mention it on the show, but I do think the stuff is worth watching because, come on, it's an alien yogurt movie. How can that not be at least somewhat satisfying? But Kat, where can we find your work online?
So I'm on Letterboxd and Twitter and everything at Gizmo Shikari. I primarily write for the Hollywood News at THMcom, but you can find a link tree on both my Instagram and Twitter, which will take you to all of my writing and various other podcast appearances.
Excellent. Larry?
You can find me on Twitter, mostly on Where Is Nowhere, which is the name of my Ian Andy's podcast, I should say. My personal Twitter is TrueTillDXM on Twitter, and you can find all my links there as well.
Excellent. And Andy?
Yeah, just as Larry was saying, at Where Is Nowhere for the podcast Twitter. You find me at Nowhere Andy. I have Instagram, but I barely use it. Like, come find me if you want. I wouldn't bother.
Fair enough. And I have been your host, Rob, and that was Directors Uncut.